Welcome to New Light Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ulrika Sullivan. I'm an intuitive spiritual life coach, and if you're here, you're likely on a quest for more. Right now, you may experience an expansion of some sort in your life. And the type of expansion I'm talking about here is sometimes that a bit hard to put your finger on. It's about the expansion of your inner world, inner growth, inner evolution, and the path of spiritual awakening that is opening up to you. On the other hand, you may feel that you have run into a rough spot, a slowdown, and your inspiration and motivation has gone out the window. It's gone somewhere else. No wonder, because the times we're in right now are throwing us for a serious ride, a serious roller coaster ride, and that's for sure. But it's never been a better time to evolve, to grow into your true self, know more about who you truly are, and align yourself with your own natural energy and your life purpose. In this podcast, I'll help you see your life in a new light. And today, I'm going to talk about 3 spiritual tools for inspiration and motivation that you can start using today to bring back that feeling of being on track again. I also want to mention that towards the end of the episode today, I'll share with you an offering that I've created just for this called Soul Growth Starter. And if this sounds really interesting to you and learning more about your own personal natural energy and how to align with that, stay with me until the end of this episode today for more. All right, so let's get into the 3 spiritual tools for inspiration and motivation. Do you feel stressed and feel like it's a full-time job to find and keep that motivation and inspiration in your life right now? Maybe work for you or your daily commitments are taking most of your energy. Is that how it is for you? And if it is, you are probably wondering, how can I step out of the stress, the boredom, or that feeling of being on autopilot to bring back your natural motivation and inspiration to align with your natural energy? Because when you do that, the motivation, inspiration, that feeling of joy is ever present. So right now, in the great pause, while we navigate a new normal as a collective, the feeling of lack of inspiration and motivation is certainly something that many of you are struggling with. The overwhelm and the stress may feel like a mind cloud that's never going away. And in the midst of feeling this mind cloud of stress weighing you down, the thought of introducing something different and new to your day may feel very far-fetched. And this is totally understandable because who wants to put more stress on what's already stressful, right? Carrying the guilt for not acting upon, not doing anything about how you're feeling, that is a very heavy weight to carry around. And that hopelessness and boredom taking over more and more because you're just so in the routine of it all. In the routine of maybe even feeling restricted right now. And all of this does look a lot different for each one of you. But it's that essence of that feeling of losing inspiration, losing motivation, and feeling inactive. So what happens to us then is that all of this just stays as a thought. And we're going on with what we have immediately in front of us that day again. So if you resonate with something like this or similar to this type of feeling, you are not alone. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Starting today, whether your situation is such that you feel no whatsoever inspiration and motivation because that sensation of restriction, maybe not able to do what you had set out to do for this time in your life, or the opposite, that you've lost the fun of it all because you feel completely stressed and overwhelmed with what's going on in your life, and you see no end to what's on your plate or what's surrounding you. In this episode today, I want to help you see your life in a new light, no matter what your situation is that has made you lose your light. Personally, I loved my corporate career. If we go just to a personal story here, I had a highly demanding job with a frequent business travel, long work hours, and a constant need to be on. I was a go-getter. This eventually put me in mental and physical stress that eventually resulted in less and less sensation of inspiration and motivation in my life. It was like I didn't know who I was anymore. And this lack of inspiration and motivation soon spread to all parts of my life. I felt very empty. I needed a day off. I felt like that all the time. Something was seriously off, and I knew it. And for you, it may be a completely different situation. This is just an example and for you, it may be completely different but something has thrown you off balance when you are not feeling inspired anymore, when you're not feeling motivated anymore. But something we may have in common, and that may be the expectation that we always have to be on and perform at our highest capacity. And that's not how we're supposed to function. As people, we align with this performance expectation, because whatever it is, because that's how we're taught to succeed, through performance and compete and outperform others. That go, go, go mentality. But this is how life gets out of balance. So think about your situation here. If you feel that you have no inspiration, no motivation right now, how did your life get out of balance like this? And in my example, identifying with being a go-getter is a powerful feeling, because you're driven. I knew I was very driven and still am, but in a different way, ambitious. And you are successful. But the lesson in here is that there are other ways to feel powerful. And it doesn't mean that life has to be an endless race. So stay with me here, and I'll get into the 3 actionable spiritual tools to help you get back to that inspiration and motivation again. I'm inviting you to consider that rest and reflection is as much go-getter behavior as creating that next opportunity or next social media campaign or next event, for example, or making that next step in your job or for your business. I invite you to consider that rest and reflection is as much go-getter behavior as the go, go, go mentality. The go-getter of the future is someone, in my opinion, who live their purpose and experience a balanced life, not giving up who they are in the process. So for me, having been one of those women who gave it all for work and realized many years later that I no longer felt inspired or motivated at work or in life. I truly believe that that's exactly when it's time to apply that go-getter behavior and make that right next step in a completely different direction. And this might be the time for you. I know because that's when I decided to pivot and make a U-turn in my life, the U-turn to self-awareness. As a result, today I feel like my life is finally full now, and I experience every day I experience inspiration and motivation instead of that feeling of being on an endless race on boring autopilot. And I want that for you too. So where do you start? If you have come to this realization that you want to bring back your inspiration and motivation in your work, day, and life, and in any situation where you feel that this is gone. And to be very honest, the very first thing is to get down to the bottom of your heart and make that bold decision for yourself that you're ready to pivot out of these feelings. Otherwise, you're going to stay exactly where you are now. Next, I'd like to offer you some options to pivot. You can either dive into immediately starting to make a plan, a to-do list, and map out what you're going to do slightly different within the boundaries that you already have established. To give you an example, you may change to another job within your industry or a similar situation as you are in now, but with a variation for the better. Or you can start exploring this life situation in a very new way, very different than ever before, using universal spiritual principles and tools that may lead you to a completely different experience than you may not have expected. I think you know what I'm going to suggest. Let's go with the latter, right? Here are 3 spiritual tools. I'm going to share with you concepts that I used for myself to kickstart getting out of the feeling of routine and boredom and that lack of inspiration and motivation into endless inspiration and motivation. How does that sound? Now, I want to take you to the very first tool, the very first concept here. And that is the idea that feeling stuck and not motivated or not inspired is not a bad thing. Welcome it. Welcome it. And this is so counteractive to what we're taught. I hear complaints all the time about people's lives and how miserable they are. We're supposed to complain if we're not happy, right? The first thing I suggest here is that your feelings are actually a blessing. And the best thing is to thank the universe for this feeling of boredom and hopelessness and lack of inspiration and lack of motivation right now. Thank it. And why is that? Because it's a sign that it's an opportunity to grow for you. Right now, your time has come. Woo-hoo. Great, right? So when you feel like this, embrace this moment of stuckness and frustration with a thank you. When you start feeling grateful for the opportunity to grow, then you're on to something. But if you latch on to the feeling of frustration and feeling like a victim of your situation, you're digging that hole deeper and deeper. But if you turn the frustration into gratitude, you're filling your cup up and start feeling hopeful just by feeling and thanking for the situation that you've been offered. It's so, as I said in the beginning here, it's so counteractive, but the more you expand on the opportunity, the realization that you actually have in this stuckness, this feeling of stuckness, there is an opportunity for you to say, thank you for this. Thank you for alerting me to this, opportunity to change. Now, next, so what do you do then in all of this? Let's say you used to feel inspired and excited about your job and life, but now you don't. That is an invitation to sit with this emotion of boredom and accept and forgive yourself. But many times there's a little voice may tell you that, oh, you shouldn't feel this bored, or you shouldn't feel this, immotivated or not motivated. Just get on with it like you used to. That's what that little voice may tell you. And this is the ego trying to keep you where you are by telling you that that's not a big deal. Just go on. Now, when you feel that your inner voice is trying to minimize your feelings about something, it's time to slow down and listen. Listen to your intuition instead of your ego. This is when your intuition is telling you that, okay, change is coming. So either you take this opportunity or not. And if you often ignore that voice, voice of intuition, and put your head down and go on, how do you usually do when that voice of just get on with it comes up? Do you ignore that voice, or do you honor that voice and say, now is a change coming? That's the opportunity. Every time you ignore this voice, every time you ignore that chance of a change, that chance of evolving yourself, every time you ignore that, this intuition, this voice of intuition is going to come back, but a little louder next time. So I invite you to take this feeling of boredom and lack of inspiration and motivation and really ask yourself, is it my time now to grow, to change? And for you, is it a yes or a no? Let's make it really simple here. Is it a yes or a no to that question? There are no buts or when and all of that in that. It's either a yes or a no to that question of, is it your time now to change and grow? If it's a no, you may not be fully ready. But don't let your ifs or buts or whens fool you here. Because if it's a yes, the very next step is to say to yourself, I fully accept and forgive myself. And if this sounds really unclear, stay on here and listen some more, because you most likely know the answer if you allow it to come forward. Is it a yes or a no? Because once you acknowledge to yourself that a change is happening and allow it in, yes, it already started, you have to get real with yourself. So it can only be a yes or a no. Change can begin when you fully accept and forgive yourself for how you got to this point. It can only change. It can only happen when you fully accept and forgive yourself for how you got to this point today. So if you have stepped over the threshold and acknowledged to yourself that, yes, change is coming right now at this time in my life, when you have begun to accept and forgive yourself, there is still that urge to look ahead and find out what's going to happen next, right? And that's where I want to take you next, to the third tool, the third concept here. Because when you have really realized, oh my goodness, I am in a change now. I am ready to grow. I am going deep. It's very, very easy to look ahead too far. Now, I want to invite you to trust that you're taken care of. You are taken care of throughout this change, throughout your entire future, I would say. But that may not be the easiest thing in the world to believe. One way to feel more supported as you begin this change is to have realistic expectations. This is key. However, just because you have accepted that change is coming into your life, that you're ready for personal growth, it doesn't mean that the doubt around all of this is going away, right? And that's very understandable. Doubt is going to slow you down, and this can be very upsetting, especially for someone who's driven and ambitious and with high expectations and aspirations, who wants to move ahead quickly. So here is where realistic expectations come in. Often our expectations are so high so that we get demotivated by the expectations themselves. Have you ever compared yourself to others instead of asking yourself, what's realistic for me right now? What feels right to do next? Can I see myself doing this tomorrow? If you can't see yourself taking action towards your next step within the next 30 days, it's not realistic for you yet. But hear me out. As you continue forward with the momentum you have towards change now, it's essential to feel supported that entire way, all the way through it all. Here's the link between support, feeling supported, and doubt. Feeling supported clears the doubt. So let's go a little deeper with this. If you can trust that the universe wants to give you all that you want, all the good stuff, and that you're already supported and held in this desire right now, the more you can trust in that, you're already supported, the more you'll feel supported. Makes sense, right? So expand on that feeling. Expand on that feeling that you're already taken care of. You are right where you need to be. Your confidence and belief takes the front seat instead of your doubt. They can't exist together. Feeling supported clears the doubt. So how can you build that trust more and more within you? And one way I want to offer here is to look for signs that the universe is organizing it all behind the scenes for you. And when you're looking for those signs, how do you know what those signs are, you may ask? And this can be a very personal thing. So start noticing, and I recommend this, to start noticing things that are showing up repeatedly for you. Maybe you've never thought of getting a sign before, but now is the time to start notice. Look for things that repeat. Look for things that keep showing up in front of you out of nowhere. It could be little things. Sometimes signs come in the form of numbers. Like you may have seen the double 11, 11, 11, or maybe three numbers like 5, 5, 5. And it's almost like your eye almost draws to that point when you can see that repeating number. Sometimes something shows up again and again to get your attention. And it's not so much about what it is that shows up, but it's the fact that you're noticing that sign and trust that you're taken care of. Trust and notice what you're thinking about in those moments you receive the sign. Because within there are clues. Now, if you are listening this far in this episode and you still are getting familiar with all of this and trying to get your head around these spiritual concepts, consider this. I'll give you a couple of examples here that may be useful and helpful. Now, the first one I want to share, like sometimes it's easy to think like this within you and this inner voice saying, there's no way I can embrace change right now today. I have to be in a better place first, and then I can make that decision. Remind yourself that this life that you have been going on is going on right before your eyes. I can't wait to experience this day and see what's in store for me today. So let me say that again. Instead of thinking there's no way I can embrace change right now, today, I have to be in a better place first before I do anything, and then I can make that decision. You want to say to yourself instead, this life that I have going on right now before my eyes, I can't wait to experience this day and see what's in store for me today. You notice the difference in the energy in those two sentences. Let me give you another example. Instead of telling yourself, why am I so stuck? Say to yourself, what is the one little thing I can do differently today? And in next one, maybe like this, instead of telling yourself, I look so tired today, I'm a loser. Say to yourself, how do I want to feel today? And last one here, just as an example, instead of saying, I'm never going to change, say to yourself, what do I want to happen? So it's all about changing and aligning with your natural inner energy in a different way, in a more supportive way, and practice leaning on these spiritual tools to tap into the massive capacity of the universe that you have access to every day. Create more inspiration and motivation in your life to find a new sense of calm and well-being in your life. So I'll give you a little summary of these 3 spiritual tools for motivation and inspiration. First, welcome the struggle. Welcome it. How can you expand on the feelings of gratitude right now? And secondly, accept and forgive yourself by repeating to yourself, I fully accept and forgive myself, how I got to this point. And thirdly, trust that you're taken care of. You are right where you need to be. So how can you bring inspiration and motivation back in your life today? And there you have it. 3 spiritual tools to bring back inspiration and motivation back into your life today. And if you're finding yourself far away from feeling inspired and motivated right now, consider this. Each of us has a unique energy imprint associated with us. The further away we come from that, the less motivated, the less inspired and imbalanced we feel. There are endless possibilities to get to know your natural energy. And if the way you're using your energy now is draining you, there's an opportunity to transform this. And living fully with inspiration and motivation every day is to invite a new way of relating to yourself and your life so that you can return to flow, aligning with your natural energy. Universal spiritual principles are laws of energy that are natural, and not neutral, but natural to us and our environment that surrounds us. We just forgot how to align with them. Do you want to awaken your spirit and more easily stay inspired and motivated? You may want to know more about your own natural energy imprint in the universe. Is that something you're interested in? And if this sounds really interesting to you, check out my offering, Soul Growth Starter. For example, if you feel frustrated and not motivated right now to do much, it's a sign. You're not aligned with your natural energy. So how do you get back to that? With Soul Growth Starter, you get a deeper insight about your own personal natural energy, along with my personal recommendations and tools and consideration for you that may support you to more easily get back to and align with your own natural energy. And I'll leave a link for more information on this offering, Soul Growth Starter, in the show notes if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about. Thank you for tuning into this episode today on New Light Living Podcast and for being here with me today. I truly appreciate you. And if you haven't joined the private Facebook group, New Light Living Podcast Community yet, head over to Facebook and join us there for more inspiration. See you next week. Trust the process. Do the work.